Hi friends, today I'm going to read the book Dr. Ted. One morning, Ted woke up, got out of bed, and bumped his knee. That's not good, thought Ted. I need a doctor. He looked everywhere, but he couldn't find one. And since Ted couldn't find a doctor, he became a doctor. Dr. Ted didn't have an office, so he made one. Dr. Ted didn't have a big bandage, so he made one of those too. Now all I need is a patient, he thought. He sat and waited for one to arrive. He waited and he waited and he waited. Nice waiting room, thought Dr. Ted. Then he waited some more. I think it's time for a house call, he thought. Hello? He called throughout the house. His mother was in the kitchen. You have measles, said Dr. Ted. We should operate. Those are my freckles, said his mother. Eat your breakfast. At school, Dr. Ted sat in the third row of Mrs. Johnson's class. All around him, students coughed and sniffled and sneezed. Dr. Ted smiled. Patients, he thought. The patients were very germy. At lunch, Dr. Ted took their temperatures and measured their blood pressure. He gave them fine medical advice, and they were all very thankful. Dr. Ted was such a good doctor, even Mrs. Johnson came to see him. You can't practice medicine in the lunchroom, she said. You have mumps, said Dr. Ted. Crutches could help. Those are my cheeks, said Mrs. Johnson. Eat your lunch. Principal Bingham walked in. Dr. Ted could tell he was very sick. He needed a doctor. We already have a school doctor who visits on Fridays, Principal Bingham said with a smile. You have gingivitis, said Dr. Ted. You need a full body cast. Principal Bingham frowned. You also have bad breath, said Dr. Ted. You need a shot. The principal's face turned bright red. And a fever, said Dr. Ted. You need a transplant. We already have a school doctor. Principal Bingham pointed him towards the door. We could do something about that foot odor, said Dr. Ted. Go home, said Principal Bingham. Dr. Ted was very sad. He packed up his big bandage and went home. That night he took 2 cookies and went straight to bed. The next day, during recess, Ted sat on a bench and sighed. He watched Frances Sylvester do gymnastics on the monkey bars. She was very talented. Everyone thought so, especially Mrs. Johnson and Principal Bingham. Frances finished her routine with a triple twisting somersault. She landed on Mrs. Johnson. Ouch! Cried Mrs. Johnson. My ankle! Principal Bingham ran this way and that. Help, he called. Call an ambulance. Call the fire department. Call the library. Just call somebody. But Dr. Ted was already there. He wrapped Mrs. Johnson's ankle with his big bandage. He checked her vision and her tonsils. Take 2 cookies, he said. You'll feel better in the morning. Just then the ambulance arrived, and the fire department, and the librarians. It's a good thing you had Dr. Ted, they all said. There's always room for another school doctor, said Mrs. Johnson. My work here is done, said Dr. Ted. Keep the bandage. Principal Bingham's face turned bright red. You really should do something about that fever, said Dr. Ted. That night, Dr. Ted closed his office, packed away his stethoscope, and went to sleep, knowing he had done a good job. The next morning, Ted woke up, got out of bed, and sniffed the air. It smelled like burnt toast. That's not good, thought Ted. I need a fire truck. The end.